right, good afternoon. Let's dig in, start getting into some autoimmune. And I guess what we'll do is we'll hang out and see who's got positive ANA, positive rheumatoid, Hashis, obviously Graves, even type 1 diabetes, MS, celiac, Crohn's. It really doesn't matter. The mechanism is basically you have one immune system that's attacking or destroying different parts of your body. So instead of the traditional or allopathic model is to just look at the symptoms and then medicate accordingly. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter because they're not going to focus on the core mechanisms behind the disease process. They don't really care about the core mechanisms behind it. And the reason for it is that ultimately it has everything to do with whether or not a pharmaceutical company can provide a medication to make symptoms or numbers disappear, go down, whatever it is. So when you have the unfortunate event, when you're noticing you have one autoimmune disease and you're starting to see other symptoms pop up, this just popped up with a patient of mine out in, I keep thinking Florida, but he's in Texas. And it was interesting. He's a younger fellow. He's a really great guy. And his mom's involved and she's helping guide him, the process and obviously paying for it and everything. And he couldn't be a better patient. Excuse me. Anyway, we reviewed some blood work yesterday. 2 different tests, one called a Cyrex Array 2, which is a leaky gut panel, and then a Cyrex Array 10, which is a food sensitivity panel. And to me, those are really good tests to usually start with. A lot of people don't realize that they have an intention that's good with regard to their diet, but have no idea that the diet they're on may be actually part of the problem. Whoa, my live just did something weird there. Am I, for whoever's on here at the moment, tell me if you can hear me, and if I'm doing is there any lag? I'm not sure if I'm getting that on my side or yours. Give me a heads up if you guys see that. There's some kind of pause. Suze, thank you for that. Thanks for the gifts, by the way, too. So anyway, we're reviewing this leaky gut panel and a food sensitivity panel. And from my perspective, it was awesome. The leaky gut test was perfect. In fact, it's the first time in quite a while that I took the leaky gut test, and usually someone has a problem with zonulin or occludin or LPS, lipopolysaccharide issues on the test, and we want to fix those things. Well, he's 17, he's young, he's absolutely a very healthy specimen outside of his psoriatic issues. And it's affecting his eyes. He's had it since he was 3, and it goes up and down his legs, toward the groin, and one of the biggest issues was also, the scalp. And so when I saw it, I was excited. But from her perspective, because they've seen so many people for these skin conditions, mostly dermatologists, but, of course, whoever their pediatrician was and general practitioner, everything was about steroids ultimately and not really showing much improvement in the last few years. And we saw this test, and I'm excited because it's like, great, we don't have leaky gut going on, which means the gut wall is solid. It means that we're actually dealing with something that isn't going to allow more infections, more bugs, more cellular debris. Your own cellular debris gets into the bloodstream, and that's what sets off more and more autoimmune disease. So I'm really excited about this test, and I could see that she looked defeated in the consultation. This is our 4th or 5th appointment. And so as we're talking, I always confront things as I see them. So I said, hey, so-and-so, you look very solemn and a little bit defeated. What's going on? And I knew what was going on. I knew that what she wanted was an absolute definitive answer that leaky gut syndrome was an active problem, because at least we had that to blame things on. And we're only about a month into his treatment plan. So I said, no, you got this all wrong. You're looking for a bad guy. You're looking for something that is an absolute thing that has an ability to be addressed right now, whether it's through food or supplements or medication. She just wants everything to be fixed like that. And I understand that. I absolutely understand that. And she's not seeing the forest for the trees. She's kind of missing the big picture, which is his gut permeability and leaky gut syndrome is right now very stable. It's beautiful. And not only that, his food sensitivity panel only had 3 foods out of 150 that were, problematic. One being sesame. I don't know how many of you guys eat sesame oil or anything that has sesame in it. It's a common finding for me. It's also cross-reactive to gluten. And so if you're any level of autoimmune, I would highly recommend get away from it. And seed oils in general. He had that. He had a lectin issue and one other, which was kind of something off in the question mark department because he didn't eat that particular food item. I don't remember what it was. And when I had to step back and say, hey, look, he has a lot of healing that's possible, and this autoimmune disease doesn't become other autoimmune diseases. So that's why I put ANA and rheumatoid factor and Hashimoto's and celiac up there. I mean, how many of you guys on here right now actually, hey, Freebird. There's Freebird. I gotta find you here. Can't go to your account. That's weird. Freebird, I'm always confused which of your accounts you're on because of the picture that you changed what is that called? So autoimmune cases, how many of you guys are dealing with pain? And maybe you're just dealing with Hashimoto's, but you have this issue that's come up where you're wondering why do my knees hurt? Like if you touch your kneecap, or maybe your bottom of your knee, or maybe your Achilles, you go down to your Achilles tendon and you squeeze on that and you've noticed that there's a change in pain, or you've had it in the past even. Has anyone had that? Because it's a very helpful finding. It's something that's starting to look like other problems and other autoimmune diseases. Oh, hey, Mark Malone. Mark Malone, follow him. There's about 28 people on here. Please follow this masterful man in the world of, Mark, I don't really understand how I would define what you do at this point. But what he's doing is he's building upon his wife's legacy of having to have gone through cancer and him figuring out ways to actually fix this problem for humankind. This person, Mark, so if I understand it right, let's just say that his muse was his wife, or is his wife, and his son, who's an autoimmune patient. And this man has figured out things that I would challenge almost most doctors that do any level of allopathic medicine would have his wealth of knowledge. And that would include functional medicine practitioners. That would include a lot of people. A very outstanding human being, very intriguing as well. So Mark, thank you for hopping in. Thanks for checking in. Please follow him, by the way. So there's 20 people on here. Go follow him. You'll be a little bit shocked about what he's got. Appreciate you as well. Massive amount of brain power behind this man and purpose. His family has let's say, things that most of us we will never have to actually handle or deal with, and he's having to figure that out, and he's doing it for mankind, and has nothing to do with medications, interestingly enough. Brain power beyond belief. All right, so going back to the autoimmune component, when you see one autoimmune pop up and you start noticing others, it's time to start taking action and start actually understanding that these disease processes have to do with this immune system you've got. The primary consideration is only your immune system and what's driving it in the wrong direction, meaning it's being pushed into destroying other tissues and starting fires, so to speak. Why is it doing that? There's something missing. There's something going on. And it can be environmental toxins. It can be hormonal disruption and aberrances or aberrants. What else? Hormones, chemical toxins, blood sugar issues, dysglycemia. And then, of course, one other thing is a genetic predisposition for this, kind of like what Mark Malone is working with in his lineage now with his children and his deceased wife. So you have to look at this from the perspective of your immune system's there to take care of you until it's overburdened and it's been basically turned into a rogue agent. That's kind of how I look at it. And I wouldn't even say it's wrong in what it's doing. I would say it's adaptive in what it's doing. In fact, when you call autoimmune conditions a disease at all, I would actually question that level of perspective and maybe say that, like diabetes and other conditions, that there's something happening within the physiology that's trying to meet certain demands and keep up with what it's built to do. And sometimes it's overwhelmed. And I wouldn't even say that's wrong, though. Thanks for the shares, by the way, you guys. Oh my God. You know what? I can't even say your freaking name there. I don't know if you're a troll or what, but should I only eat whole foods? I couldn't tell you. What are you doing now? And what's the condition that you're dealing with? Freebird, something I'm lacking. What were you lacking? What is leaky gut? Where is it leaking? Stop spreading these lies. How many of you guys, brain, Freebird, that's not true at all. You've answered some questions that most people don't get when we've been on these lives. That's not true at all. BM card, what is leaky gut? Stop spreading these lies. I love troll accounts. Just look up lipopolysaccharides, look up occludin and zonulin, and then look up testing for that. And like I said, there's quite a few tests you can run on this. It's interesting, people like BM Cart, who are usually just fearful of change and fearful of anything outside of the official version of what your health should be. They like their authorities, right? They like to lick the boot, so to speak. What's interesting is you can run these tests and you can actually identify problems like with a Hashimoto's patient that has no idea that they're actually pushing into a celiac issue. And you can run these antibodies in a preventative manner. The antibodies, as they build and they destroy more and more tissue, only become relevant to the quote-unquote mainstream healthcare when you have symptoms that go along with the diagnosis they want to throw at you. Does that make sense? Do a thumbs up if that makes sense. They don't even care about the antibodies like Hashimoto's antibodies. Most of them assume you have it. That's why they don't check it. And once you ask them for it, they'll say one of two things. You don't need that. You probably have it anyway. And what you're asking them for is confirmation for the core reason of the disease process that you're dealing with. And you get dismissed. This is why being an advocate for your own health with the attitude of you have a brain in your head and you deserve to have your answers answered or your questions answered. Okay? You have a brain in your head and you don't have to let people like bowel movement cart dictate to you whether or not you can ask questions and come up with your own ideas, like Mark Malone there. Mark Malone has just blown the top off of a lot of things that I've actually never even seen. Blown the lid off of it. And so if you had little followers like BM Cart, bowel movement cart, who's just going to continue promoting the same ideas, keeping in the same box, and never actually addressing patients that I see. Patients come to me and say, I've seen at least 10 different doctors, and all of them tell me next to nothing. That's one big thing that I've noticed in my career, is the doctors tell them next to nothing, or they say, oh, your tests look fine. In the meantime, they'll say, well, what's this high TPO antibody here? And the doctor will say, oh, it's nothing. You just have something called baby Hashimoto's. I've literally had a patient tell me that, and I was never more disgusted, because that basically in that patient's mind did such a disservice to help them understand that they have autoimmune disease, which becomes worse over time if they do not handle the things that push autoimmune problems in the wrong direction. Your immune system is meant to obviously, take care of you. When it starts going off the reservation and it starts attacking all kinds of things, there's something being missed, and these doctors will not look at it. They'll never tell you about it. They won't tell you to take a leaky gut test. They will not tell you to take a food sensitivity panel. And like I said, when bowel movement cart comes in and says there's no such thing, well, why is it there's very reputable companies that have these tests like zonulin and lipopolysaccharides and occludin? Why would they have a gliadin test? Why would they have a glutenin test? Why would they have casein testing? Because they do know what's going on, and little men are scared of changes. For those of you that have a brain that sees past the bullshit that's been going on in our country, I would say since Rockefeller took a hold of everything, in 1911 with the Flexner Report. When you start learning the history of healthcare in our country, your eyes will be forced wide open into the absolute disgusting manipulation of the public to continue taking medication after medication after medication, and that's it. Nothing else can help you but meds. That's why rarely your doctors will tell you anything about what to eat, especially if you're an autoimmune patient. They'll say, yeah, you might want to avoid, some of them, I will say this, in the last few years, maybe 5, since I've been doing it, I've been, 13 years now, I've been doing functional medicine. Back then, no one said anything about anything. In fact, they always poo-pooed it, like bowel movement cart. That guy came in, he's like, oh, that's all untrue. Go get your COVID shot, right? That's the kind of person bowel movement cart is. But these guys would tell my patients regularly, fish oil doesn't do anything, or CoQ10 is not necessary if you're on statins. This kind of rhetoric. And lo and behold, as social media has taken a massive change in the eyes and ears of the public, because now people have access to information and research that was largely ignored anyway, if not hidden. Now you have this threat that's emerging, and there's a lot of things happening in the background. Like Anna just said it there. I demanded my tests. Here's the thing. I love patients like that. In my career, my favorite patients, in the sense of favoritism being based on the fire in their belly, not really personality-wise. I don't really, as long as you're not a total asshole, I'm pretty sure we can work together. If you're a pain in the ass and you notice all your practitioners don't want to work with you, please don't knock on my door. If you're a pain in the ass. Now, if you're somebody who wants results and improvements, that's different, and that should be expected. And for me, that means if you have low energy, for instance, or brain fog, that should absolutely improve. You should see changes in brain fog, of energy, for sure, with any functional medicine practitioner you're seeing. Like most of us, those are the 2 low-hanging fruit that we would say would improve in most patients. And then weight loss is, I would say, 3rd on that list. And then you start seeing improvements in mood swings. That's a big one. And most of your doctors, what they want to do, what do most of your doctors want to do if you notice you're starting to have mood swings? Put the answer down below there. Anna, thanks for I think you were sharing the live. Somebody's sharing the live. The more you share this, by the way, and if you're enjoying what I'm saying, especially as I rip on trolls, share it with as many people as you can, because it gets the word out. And it benefits me and my channel, obviously, but more importantly, if you like this. Thanks, you guys. That's great. And then here's another thing. I just learned this week. If you're enjoying it and want to be active in this will actually start promoting when I'm on live. Go up to the where your name is, and you'll see a little white box with an orange heart in it, or at least that's what it is on mine. And what that does is it changes your ability to interact and subscriptions and stuff, but you don't have to do a subscription if you don't want to. It's a couple bucks or whatever, but you can still do emojis and send stuff, and writing stuff here helps all of it. Anna, that's because I believe in what you're saying. Out of everything I just said there, oh, you're a Romanian teacher, cool. Anna, if you don't mind putting your perspective on what I'm talking about at the moment, what is your perspective on the United States people? And Karina, good to see you. I have so many Irish people on here, I don't know what the hell that's about. It's a good thing in Bucharest. What's your, Anna, from your perspective, and Karina, if you want, what's your perspective on the United States and the pharmaceutical prevalence in this country and the people that are, the citizens having to deal with it? Like, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? What's your number one perspective? And maybe even your friends and family have talked about this, about what the United States of America healthcare system has done to the populace. Because I think it's much different here than most countries. And I'm talking, well, I'll try to be as unbiased with that question as possible. Maddie, thank you for all those gifts, by the way. Anna, you're getting into the naughty talking points there, or nefarious maybe, and I do not disagree with that. I try to keep off that subject matter just because it's so heavy. At the end of the day, what's my job? It's helping patients regain their vitality, their exuberance for life, helping them actually change their condition to the point at which it starts affecting their home life and their interactions with their spouse or their kids, or maybe their dog, whatever it is, whatever the situation is, and improving things for their work life. Like, if you feel like hell and you know that you're about 30% less energy than you should be rightfully, and you go to work with that, or you have brain fog. I'm an accountant, and they're scared to death that if they slip up, now we're way better now than they were 6 months ago, but their number one fear was that they would slip up at their job and cause people to lose money, let alone just lose their job. And the cool thing about them was they didn't want to hurt the company. It's not so much about their own job, but making sure that they're doing a good job. If you're dealing with autoimmune disease, you can't screw around with that. You can't screw around with going kind of dazed out, driving around in a neighborhood and being distracted by a cell phone, let alone, I think we've all been through that. But imagine at one point where you're dazed out, you're not paying attention because your energy levels are low thyroid hormone, inability to concentrate, maybe there's dysglycemia issues, there's blood sugar up and down. And then the worst thing you can imagine happens. You accidentally hurt somebody when you're driving because you can't focus. It's no joke. I take it extremely seriously. Here's another consideration with autoimmune. Most people will not tell you that there are crossover autoimmune reactions with the thyroid and nervous system tissue. The thyroid and gut tissue. And remember, the gut is the second brain. The thyroid tissue here and the proteins that are in here are similar to cerebellar tissue. And that can cause issues with balance and coordination. And this to me is extremely important because you may not see these problems pop up now, but if you lost your ability to move freely and unimpeded and with balance 10, 20 years from now, when you're 60, 70, or 80 years old, you would want to have known that that was part of the situation, let alone things that have to do with your, your temperament, your mood swings, all of that. I had to click somebody off there. I never know what to do with these guys. Come from usually somewhere in the Mid-East, and I don't know what the hell they're doing. I mean, I appreciate it, I guess, but it's interesting. Hello, sweet wife. My wife just popped on. Karina, I live right beside a pharmaceutical company called Almac. Oh, wow. God, makes you wonder what's in the water there, right? I'm sure that's what you're thinking about, the environment. Anna, you have Hashimoto's hypothyroid, I think is what that said. Oh yeah, those are those little, so that little Go Popular thing, here's some shameless plugging. Apparently that helps something with getting the FYP, the For You page, to push the live out more and more. So see what you guys can do. Let's see what it does. That would be fun to see. I've been watching these ladies who, I guess their pages are dedicated to TikTok account building. And what I like is the ability to have my live go out to broad audiences, because we can actually touch on a lot more information with that. I mean, it allows me obviously to help more people, but more importantly, the conversation gets a lot more interesting. In fact, let's spice it up. So let's see who's in the number one spot. We got Freebird, and Fabi, or Fabi, I'm not sure which. Fabi, what are you dealing with? Since you're in the number one spot, Mrs. Martin is in the number 3 spot. But Fabi, are you Hashimoto's? Are you lupus? Are you rheumatoid? What's the situation? And throw some numbers out there. Let's see some test numbers. Like for instance, if you have let's say a marginally high TSH, and then you have fairly normal T4 and T3 levels, okay? That is a situation that's starting to push into a thyroid issue. Now, most of the time, you're going to have a connection to one or two things. In that situation, it's going to be cofactor issues, so maybe selenium, zinc, copper, B vitamins. Maybe iodine's part of the problem. Or you're actually starting to push into the Hashimoto's department. Or maybe you have positive antibodies, but no one's taking those antibody tests. And if you are dealing with loss of energy and brain fog, and you're losing your hair and your eyebrows are starting to fall out, skin changes, you're starting to see accelerated aging, you better get that Hashimoto's testing, because then that changes the game. It's not just about hormone replacement. Primary hypothyroidism is where this thing here, this thyroid, does not make enough thyroid hormone. Hashimoto's is the process of the immune system coming in and beating the hell out of that thyroid, so then it becomes laden with scar tissue and it loses its ability to produce enough hormone, which is when your doctor says, oh, you have low thyroid. What's interesting is a lot of patients end up with Graves', and they may not treat it, and the Graves' basically is the first step in it, and then 10, 20 years go by and suddenly they're hypothyroid, and then they have to be put on Synthroid or whatever. And that's sad, because there are things that absolutely can be done to halt the inflammation that drives the autoimmune process. That's all I'm talking about. 100% of the time, it's about having the cytokines that are involved with this inflammation process. These are amino acids, essentially, proteins, and prostaglandins, which are like a kind of a fat-based component, which is going to be handling this whole inflammation process. Interleukins, tumor necrosis factor. There's all these tests we can run to see what's driving these processes in you. And sometimes it's like my patient Eric's test yesterday. His leaky gut testing was beautiful. To me, that's a huge win. Whereas mom was wanting more answers, like, well, what the hell is driving the psoriasis? One thing that she's not, I don't know if she's considering this or not, I'm trying to be gentle about it, is that your inoculations that you're giving kids at 1, 2, and 3 years old, which, by the way, he developed this at 3 years old, and that's when he was getting some of the boosters. So, aluminum in the system, that's one of the main ingredients in your vaccines, you guys. Aluminum. What is aluminum for in a vaccine? Does anyone know? We'll just talk facts here. We won't talk about pro or con. We'll just talk about the facts. Why would they put aluminum into those shots? Let's just be as neutral as possible. What's a possibility here? And it definitely has to do with autoimmunity, just so you know. Anyone want to guess? Gigi, you got that right. It doesn't leave the body, along with some of the other metals that are in there. Hey, Joy. Karina, you said due to depression. The aluminum? I'm not sure if I connect with that, or I'm not picking up what you're saying there. I'm sure it's me, not you, Karina. They are saying that is there as conservative. Not sure I get that one, Anna, either. Oh, I got a bunch of filtered comments here, guys. I didn't even see these. Endocrine disruption, Freebird. It causes it, I think is what you're saying. Kind of. It has to do with immune system function. So think of it this way. They're giving you a jab. And what are they trying to induce? What is the point of any jab? They're trying to induce a reaction from your immune system to what's in that jab. Now, on its face, it sounds kind of like, it's almost like homeopathic medicine in a sense. You introduce little amounts of stuff and then the body builds up a tolerance. That's kind of the old premise of it, not the new one, not the mRNA presence or mRNA definition. So what they're doing is they're trying to drive this immune system response against whatever, an antigen. But the aluminum is in there to actually even increase that immune system response even more, because usually if they just put fragments of whatever organism they're wanting you to be shot with or inoculated with, that aluminum creates a storm, okay? Literally a storm from the immune system, because it has to figure out what to do with the aluminum. The theory is essentially that if the immune system gets riled up by that aluminum at the same time as the adjuvants, the antigens, there's adjuvants in it, but the antigens are the particles of the bug, so to speak, the virus. The aluminum is considered an adjuvant. It's an add-on, along with many other things like polysorbate 80, things that are cancerous. But that's there to drive an immune system response. Now, if that's the case, put your thinking cap on. If I put something that usually is considered a neurotoxin, like aluminum, or organic mercury, which is thimerosal, if I put that metal into the body, what has to clean that up? If I have to put something that would generally never get into the body, in fact, if you were to put that into a glass and drink it, guess what they would say? They would say you're being poisoned. But somehow it's magically better for you when it's injected into the blood directly. So, what happens with an exaggerated immune response due to metal being put directly into the bloodstream? Anyone know? Let's see if Anna or Freebird gets the answer here. Come on, we got 40 people on here. Somebody's got to know. Thanks for the, Lorraine, thanks for the gifts. Freebird beat everybody. I don't know what you did there, man. So what will happen if you have an exaggerated response of the injection of a metal like aluminum, that the immune system is riled up by that, right? What are the implications for the immune system going forward from that point on? Cytokine storm, there you go. So we have, basically what I'm saying, you guys, is if that immune system gets riled up by aluminum or any other adjuvant that's in those things, it's basically increasing its response and spiking it. What are the chances that maybe the body will become autoimmune with things like that injected into you? So if it's an exaggerated response, and it's something the body never has done to it at any given time, you never have aluminum pumped into your blood, okay, without this magical intervention. That's autoimmunity. That's where that core mechanism starts from. Why is autoimmunity climbing, getting worse and worse? Well, there's a lot of theories, but I will say this. If you're putting something into your body to hope to bring up that immune system response so that it somehow connects with whatever the antigens are that they're putting in that shot, if that's happening, why wouldn't it be considered that autoimmunity could be induced by that very process. Everything's sensitive and it blows up. Now, what's even more interesting is when you look at the research on this, it decreases the immune system response after those things, those jabs are given. So going back to autoimmunity, let's tie this all back together. You have this process which literally pumps stuff into your blood that would never make it in there without them intervening and doing something that some people think is great. I don't, but that's my opinion. But my question is if I took the adjuvants and the ingredients outside of the antigen and the bug, let's just say everything else that's in there, if you were to put it into a shot glass and be told to drink it, what would that be called? What would happen if someone told you to drink what's in those jabby jabs and told you to drink it? It'd be called a cocktail. Yeah, you're not wrong there. What kind of cocktail? The gift that keeps on giving, autoimmunity. So think about that. They wouldn't tell you to drink it. So what I'm saying is if you were in your doctor's office, whoever it is, pediatrician, GP, and you said, hey doc, I would rather that's not injected straight into the blood, into my vein. I would rather that we put this in a shot glass and I drink it. That would just be called poison. You would literally be drinking poison. It's pretty interesting that that magically switches hands when it gets injected into your blood. And you would respond to that. You would have issues and you would feel that. That would be a problem. You would literally be poisoning yourself. Any of them. Yeah, the sugar cube was the first batch Sue's. Interestingly enough. Now, why would they change that? Why would they change that from a sugar cube to an injection later on? Anyone know? Why was it on a sugar cube? Anyone know the answer to that? Plume, I didn't get the shot. Everyone around me did, including my son. Oh man, it breaks my heart. I'm sorry to hear that. Well, going back to my patient Eric, he's been fully vaccinated his whole life, and the onset started with his second round at 3 years old. And interestingly enough, he had 3 of the CBD shots, and boom, not much longer, a few months later, he's coming back with full-blown psoriasis again. Real bad around the eyelids, uveitis. What's cool is right now, we're a month into it, and he said that the dryness and the scaling is resolving and it's improving. According to him, I said, well, objectively, what would you say your improvement level with psoriasis at this point is from what you're seeing, from your perspective? And he's saying, I think he said it's 45% better. So I'm like, well, that's a good start. That's 1 month in. And he's talking about the plaquing and the scaling and everything. So this is how you access autoimmune disease, you guys. It's going to be through the gut, okay? First and foremost. Then it's going to be repopulating the gut with things that promote great microbiome patterns, very diverse and very, diverse meaning different types and equal amounts. The more diverse it is, the more buoyancy there is to the immune system of the gut. If you lose that, and you become very dominant with a few species and then the others are kind of lagging, you will see your ability for longevity go down. So the better you can build your gut to be more diverse, and roughly the diversity is fairly equal, the stronger your immune system is. Let me see if anyone answered that. Go back here. In the life of Blair, it caused the autism and 3 Asperger's savant. What was if you don't mind me asking, I've had personal experiences, both familial and employees actually, who have been through that. And it's always mind-blowing to me because one of the people had a very handicapped child, in a wheelchair, and just not much going on upstairs, just very, very struggling. And then they gave her the shots, and we're talking at 6 months old with the first ones. And then they did it again, and everything caused that, is what I'm saying. I think I'm telling the story wrong. So she started off pretty handicapped, but then ended up getting 2 different series. The first series, she said specifically, she went into the high-pitched screaming, like the cat cry is what that's called, and called them, and they assured her it wasn't anything to do with that treatment, the jab. And I think it was probably DPT at that time. It was 74, 75, because her daughter was my age. And then took her back in, I think a few months later. I don't remember the cycle on the timing. And after being reassured it had nothing to do with it, gave her the second one, and then ended up becoming crippled from that. And it was night and day. I mean, it was like fine, able to crawl, and then crippled, not any longer able to use her limbs. And then a former family member, his son, and he was talking, able to speak, I think 3 or 4 years old, not totally talking, but capable of talking and communicating, eye contact, and had the same experience. Oh no, it couldn't be that. And then got him again, because they both work at the hospital, and everything shut down. So yeah, it's evil. Susie Blues, maybe sugar cube because of the because you were kids, like it would taste good. I thought that too forever, and then found out that it had to do with the fact that polio subsists off of sugar in the gut. What was the most prominent time for an infection to happen with polio? Does anyone know? This is very well worth reading on this medical history. Baby, you think sugar's bad for you? You and me both, pretty much. I don't know anything else than a hummingbird that can subsist on it and live well. He's quirky, but so smart, 100% verbal speaking. Oh, nice. Speaking Spanish on his own? That's badass. Lorraine, so are you saying no immunization for anything? My father had polio as a child. I won't say for you what you should do. I would never do that. But for my life, my sons were raised without. Lorraine, there's history there that's very, very well worth reading on. And I'll point you, if you're interested, if you're, there's a lot of emotion. I had a friend in high school. In fact, we got into this because back then I actually happened to know about some of this through somebody. Was it high school? No, it was college, rather. It was college. Anyway, he had the same response. His dad had clubfoot, and the sad part of that. Now, what's interesting is just go back to the history of DDT. Okay, DDT and polio, and you will be shocked to find a lot of stuff that was not talked about. And then, of course, research Salk and Sabin. The different types of vaccines, the sugar cube. Why did they stop giving that? Well, and it had to do with making kids have polio. By the 70s, Salk ended up saying that any case of polio that existed at that point was due to the vaccine itself. Do a thumbs up if you did not know that. So, and that was the scientist behind the Salk vaccine. By the 70s, when they declared it a completely eradicated, right? The 70s, they came out and said, oh, we cured the world of this thing. In reality, what they did was they changed the diagnosis standards and what they were able to say about what happened pre and post vaccine. So basically what they did is they, through clever numbers and changing diagnostic parameters and duration of infection, it changed everything. So, and again, going back to the whole idea that your father had it and the vaccine and everything, you have to understand this history, especially when you start finding out about DDT and its connection to it. It's pretty mind-blowing. Is scleroderma hereditary? All autoimmune tends to have a hereditary or genetic component to it. So what's kind of crazy about that user '09 is people dissociate if they don't have the exact same diagnosis of autoimmune. They somehow think that it's separate. Autoimmune is the core mechanism behind the symptoms and diseases that it ends up being. So what I mean by that is your immune system uniquely will destroy and attack different parts of your body. Now, the problem is within the immune system and things that drive that. That's the part that pushes on the genetics in the wrong manner. And then it ends up becoming a specific diagnosis, and that doesn't matter. What matters is the immune system itself is tuned down. The volume on that guitar amp, I like to call it like a guitar amp. I play guitar. I always think of like, if I put my guitar past 4, it's freaking too loud, right? My house shakes. I have a pretty nice amp. And, or maybe 6, whatever. So the volume on the immune system is way too loud, and it's disrupting other tissues and areas of the body. So whether it's scleroderma or lupus or Sjogren's or, oh my gosh, I mean, you have a bunch, Crest syndrome, you have rheumatoid, whatever. It does not matter. What matters is that immune system is driving itself nuts, attacking and destroying other tissues. That's what we're after that. We want to improve the immune system's response, tame the beast. It's kind of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. We want to make sure that Dr. Jekyll sticks around and Mr. Hyde is not the dominant personality. But once you have an autoimmune, you always will have that self-recognition. Just like when your body becomes infected with something, a virus or whatever, there's that permanent recognition to that organism. And so that's why people will have relapses, MS or Hashimoto's. I have some Hashimoto's patients, I always think that I hit that home, that they'll have antibody counts pop up. So if their TPO goes up, they'll say, what the hell, I thought we fixed this. It's dynamic. Give me 3 things that you guys think will drive your antibodies up. So you could be kicking butt, doing well, blood sugars are great, but what's something a little bit outside of your control that might drive these antibodies up? Any ideas? Antibiotics, yeah, absolutely. I would change some things. Environmental, yep. So let's say you walk through a area that got sprayed for mosquitoes, right? That might have some neurological issues for you. And neurological issues and the immune system are intimately connected. Not to mention the gut or whatever else it's affecting. Glyphosate. What about lack of sleep? So let's say you have a new kid at home, or you have a grandchild you're watching and you got 3 hours of sleep. That little bit of intensity might drive it in the wrong direction. Might drive it in the wrong direction.